Hi Equals, it's Kim, and this isn't the second and perhaps the last in my, unless you all come up with some new questions, in my very short series entitled Everything You Always Wanted to Know But Really Shouldn't Have Asked. My entire channel is around trying to educate people on LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender issues, concepts, etc. So in a way, for those of you old enough to remember this book, it's kind of like the everything you always wanted to know but were afraid to ask. And those are questions maybe you should be asking, but there are definitely a series of questions, and so I will link my video from last week here, which was the first in the series, which was based on questions that I often get in when I'm doing presentations that really shouldn't be asked out loud in a group. And then today, although disclaimer, and I totally get the meaningful involvement of people with a transgender experience talking for themselves, I do find myself out in the world doing a lot of training where I am speaking on behalf of my transgender brothers and sisters. And so I wanted to include here today, although I'm not transgender, some of those questions that you shouldn't ask your transgender friends either. Maybe you really need the answer to some of these things in general, not personally about somebody. And that's what Google is for. But here's a couple of things that you should never ask your transgender or even gender nonconforming friends and acquaintances and people you happen to meet on the street. It's interesting that when somebody is SOGI diverse, okay, I've been using these, I'll put up here a video about SOGI, which is sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. So SOGI, that's kind of like the data piece of trying to count LGBT people. For people who are SOGI diverse, the dominant culture, so straight, cisgender people, tend to think they can ask questions that they would never ask their straight, cisgender friends, family, acquaintances. So my first piece of advice is don't ask a transgender or gender nonconforming person a question you wouldn't ask your friends, neighbors, and family. If you would think it was too invasive, too private, too personal, too anything, don't think you should be asking your transgender folks. Google it, people. All right. So what are those questions? And maybe I can help with answering some of those things. So when people transition, so when transgender people transition, so remember, you can be transgender and never transition. Okay, so transgender means that there is a difference between what the brain of the person is telling them they are in terms of gender and what their body tells them. And so there's a disconnect between those two things which causes emotional, psychological, mental stress that is medically referred to as gender dysphoria. The person never has to actually transition, because as long as that disconnect exists, regardless of what they do, they're technically transgender. They may not admit it to themselves. They may not admit it to anybody else in the world. So some people never transition. Some people socially transition, which means they maybe change their name. They request that you use pronouns other than the one that you might be used to using for them. So if they are a trans man, which means they were assigned female at birth but understand themselves to be a man, they may go from what you may have previously used she, her, hers as pronouns to refer to them. I run into a lot of people who don't actually know what we're talking about when we say this. So if I say Susie went to the movie and while she was there, she got popcorn. Okay, so that she that I use to replace the name Susie is the pronoun that we're referring to. So when we say that they are, would want you to use male pronouns, that way So Susie, same example, Susie was assigned female at birth, but understands himself to be male and changes his name to Sam and says to all his friends and family and acquaintances, please call me Sam and use he, him, his pronouns. That would mean that same person I used in the example earlier about going to the movie, you would say, Sam went to the movie, and while he was there, he got popcorn. That's what they're asking. And if that's all that happens, and maybe they start their gender expression changes, so the way they perform gender, right, would be the way they dress, the way they cut their hair, the way they wear makeup, the way they sit in a chair, the way they walk. All of those kinds of things are your performance of gender. So the performance of gender may also change. It may not, because they may have always been performing their gender the way they understood themselves to be. Right? But that's all known as social transition, and that may be all the person is doing. So that there's nothing medical involved. Now there could be this person, we'll call this person Sam, who was assigned the name Susie and female at birth, but understands himself to be man and calls himself Sam now, and everybody else should call him Sam. So Sam decides that he wants to start medically transitioning. He doesn't know how far he's going to take that necessarily. He may not know right away, but he may, assuming that he's, past puberty. I have another video that talks about puberty blockers, etc. I'll try to link it here. It was a while ago, so I don't know how available it still is. But so, presuming that he's past puberty, Sam may start hormone replacement therapy. So this is essentially the same kinds of therapy that are available to cisgender people for various medical reasons. So these are not new drugs. They aren't different. They're used with straight cisgender people all the time for various medical reasons. They're not experimental. But one of their uses is for transgender people, particularly in this case. So Sam may take testosterone. Now, I'm menopause or postmenopausal or whatever the technical term is. And so like I take estrogen to try to keep my body a little bit younger, shall we say, but I'm not transgender. But I'm still taking estrogen because it has purposes other than for transgender people. It is not an experimental drug. So Sam may take testosterone. And testosterone may usually causes a little bit more muscle mass. It causes beard growth, might actually cause balding. Sam may then look more masculine, more male, than he did prior to any medical transition. It's important that transgender people have access to good quality, knowledgeable medical care when they are taking hormone replacement therapy. There are some potential side effects, and so this shouldn't be something they're getting through the mail. It shouldn't be something that they're having to be secretive about. They need medical supervision. And so their insurance should cover this. Their, doctor's offices should get themselves educated about it. There is a lot that the community could do to better support transgender folks. And this hormone replacement therapy is one of those medical treatments that's in question when the federal government starts allowing religious objection to medical care. So if somebody says, well, I don't believe in transgender people, which is kind of weird because there are transgender people and they're saying they don't believe in them. But they want to have the right to refuse like hormone replacement therapy. That's kind of new. We'll see how all of that plays out. The Affordable Care Act currently does say that you can't deny medical treatment to one person that you would give to another person. So remember, like I told you, I'm cisgender and I take estrogen because of being postmenopausal. I actually don't think that's a word, but anyway, y'all know what I mean. So I take estrogen. So because I take estrogen and nobody seems to have a problem with it, you can't deny estrogen to maybe a transgender person. We need to settle this. Either medical treatment is available or medical treatment is not available. You shouldn't be able to pick and choose for arbitrary reasons who gets it. So that's medical transition. And then that person, so Sam, may do some other surgeries to align his body with what his head says he is. And they might be cosmetic. They might involve, not sure what the very, very latest term is, but gender confirmation surgery. This is what used to be known as sex reassignment surgery, but it's actually gender confirmation surgery in that it confirms the person's gender. Again, not everybody does this. There are medical reasons why it's not possible. There are financial reasons why it's not possible. There may be mental health reasons why it's not possible. So not everybody goes this far. Now, there are people with a lot of money. I may be showing some ignorance here, but I think this is more common with trans women, that there's a lot of other surgeries that may occur. There could be laser hair removal to remove the last of the beard. There may be facial feminization surgery, so like maybe nose, chin, jawline, to make the face look more feminine. I'm sure there's other surgeries because there's a lot of cosmetic surgery out there that somebody could have done if they have that kind of money, because generally it's not covered by insurance. So very, very wealthy transgender people who we see in the media, so the Laverne Cox, Caitlyn Jenner, they've got the money to engage in surgeries that do make them look more feminine than some of their trans women sisters. It's unfortunate because that leaves their transgender sisters a little bit more visible to the world. I think trans women, trans men would just like to blend in with everybody else. So the point of the video, because I know I'm getting long now, you have no right to private information about what kind of surgery somebody has, what kind of medical treatment somebody's taking, what kind of hormones anybody's on. That is private. It's none of your business. If you want to know in general what those kinds of things are, Google it, watch this video, DM me or private message me, and I will do my best to answer your questions. And if I don't know them, I'll go ask somebody who does, and then I'll get back to you. Don't ask people. Don't ask them their surgical status. Don't ask them their hormone status. Don't ask them about their old names or their old pronouns. All you need to know is what name they'd like you to use and what pronouns they'd like you to use, and then you use them to the best of your ability. Nobody's perfect. Everybody struggles. So if you get it wrong, and I am guilty of this, I struggle because sometimes I know people before they transition, and then they transition, and I have to make that adjustment. I'm like everybody else in the world, and I will mess up sometimes. But as long as you correct yourself and you're trying, that's the most that anyone can expect from you, is that you are trying your best. Everything you always wanted to know, but really shouldn't have asked. Here's the place to ask it. Put it in your comments below, DM me, send me a private message. I'll try to answer your questions as best I can. Equals, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up, hit the red subscribe button. I'd love you to hit the bell so that it turns red so that you get notified every time I put up a new video. And I hope you have a great week, Eagles.